Good afternoon to you all. Welcome to this live event organized by the International Seed Federation. My name is Dr. Souza, and I am the Seed Health Manager here at the International Seed Federation. Before we start this live event today, I would like to go through with you a little bit of a housekeeping to you all. This event will be held in English, and you, the audience, is invited to ask relevant questions on the topics that will be presented here today. Please add your questions to the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. I would like to start by addressing which it is one of the main events for the phytosanitary world that happens this year, which it was the 16th session of the Commission on Phytosanitary Measures, or short for CPM 16. This event was held virtually during the 5th, 7th, and 21st of April this year by the International Plant Protection Convention, which we call IPPC. During the event, key discussions and agreement by the contracting parties did happen, some of them very relevant to us, the seed sector. One of them was the adoption of the International Standard number 46, which we call IPPC 46. This international standard was very specific for commodity standards. This is his title. Therefore, I would like to start this event by having a speaker which will present to us all a little bit more about this international standard and how important this standard it is for us for the seed sector. And I would like to introduce you all to Joanne Wilson. She's the Principal Advisor at the Ministry for Primary Industry, MPI, in New Zealand. And she is the core lead steward of this document that has been recently adopted by the IPPC. She will be presenting to us on this newly adopted international standard and explain a little bit to us how the industry, how the seed sector can contribute for this document. Let's hear from her.
Kia ora and hello. I'm Joanne Wilson. I work for the Ministry for Primary Industries in New Zealand as a Principal Advisor, where I advise on exports, import regulatory systems and phytosanitary issues management. I'm a Southwest Pacific member for the IPPC Standards Committee, where I'm an Assistant Steward for the standard ISPM 46 Commodity Specific Standards for Phytosanitary Measures that I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm also an Assistant Steward for the Technical Panel for Commodity Standards that will develop annexes to this particular standard. I'd like to begin firstly with a brief background on the development of the standard, so some of the principles that have shaped it, some of the expected benefits from this standard, and what the commodity-specific annexes to the standard will look like. So pest measures, and the criteria for assessing the measures that will be included in them. And lastly, I'd like to talk to you about how I think the seed industry can contribute to these new standards. So firstly, the IPPC Strategic Framework 2020 to 2030 proposes the development of ISPMs for specific commodities in order to simplify trade and expedite market access negotiations. Now, this overarching standard, number 46, was first drafted by an IPPC focus group back in 2019. So it was actually, the first draft was before the strategic framework was went live. Now, this standard has been consultation process and was recently adopted at the phytosanitary, the Commission for Phytosanitary Measures number 16 in April. It's so new that it actually won't be on the IPPC website just yet, I don't think. Now, specific commodities will be developed as annexes to the overarching standard, unless, of course, there's a more suitable standard that they should be annexed to. For instance, ISPM 38, the International Movement of Seeds, I expect that there will be annexes for specific seed commodities developed over time. Now, the overarching standard provides guidance on the purpose, the use, content, and publication of annexes to this standard. So some of the principles that shaped it. So the core principles were that sovereign rights of contracting parties are not affected by commodity standards. Existing international obligations are also unaffected, and commodity standards do not impose additional obligations on importing countries. The obligation for the standard is for contracting parties to consider it. So consider the pests and measures in the standards when they're developing importing regulations. Now, Now, the scope of commodity standards does not include diversion from intended use, and it will be clear from the commodity descriptions what that end use will be. Now, the regulation of any pest still requires technical justification, so a country will still need to justify it through pest risk assessment about whether a pest should be regulated and the strength of measures that it will require. And pests and options for phytosanitary measures presented in these commodity standards will not be exhaustive. As you're aware, many commodities have dozens, hundreds, even more pests associated with them, so it's unrealistic to have exhaustive lists, but the list can be added to over time. Now, the expected benefits of commodity standards. Well, foremost, we're hoping that will facilitate safe trade. Of course, making best use of available time and resources should also be a benefit from these standards. Many MPPOs do not have enough people to do pest risk assessment or pest risk management evaluations. So I see that the biggest benefit will be from the assessments for measures, actually. It should also expedite market access negotiations between countries and harmonise phytosanitary measures. It will also provide support and assistance to developing countries who obviously don't have the resources a lot of the time to do those evaluations that are needed to set import requirements. And hopefully supporting the relevance and the influence of the IPPC into the future. So the IPPC has developed most of the core standards that are needed for implementing importing and exporting systems. So having these commodity standards is the next step for the IPPC. So the commodity-specific annexes to this particular standard will include a commodity description, as I've already said, which will include the end use of the product. It'll list commonly regulated pests associated with the commodity and a list of options for phytosanitary measures. And it will also have references that support those lists as well. They will not include exhaustive lists of pests and measures, as I've already said, because it's not really feasible. And it will not remove the need to undertake some degree of pest risk assessment. So measures will be included in these standards where they are set as a phytosanitary measure by at least one contracting party or when they're included in at least one bilateral arrangement. And they will only be included by the technical panel if they are practical and feasible. So inclusion of a measure will be further supported by one of the following as well. So experience from use in trade indicates that the measure is effective. So historical trade will be a major theme with this as well. Experience from domestic use will also support inclusion of a measure. And of course, experimental evidence indicates that the measure is effective. It's not always possible to have experimental evidence, but there could be qualitative evidence also that can show that a measure is effective. And information from pest risk assessments could be considered as well. And of course, adopted ISPMs, if there's some that are relevant to the pests and commodities, that will also support the inclusion in the standard. Regional standards. Now, I've highlighted this because if a commodity standard has been developed regionally and is operating and implemented, then that's also a good reason to include a measure in a commodity standard. So commodity standard annexes will not be developed if there are no effective measures or an existing ISPM already provides sufficient guidance on something. And a commodity shouldn't be regulated within the scope of the IPPC. So a bit more about the technical panel for commodity standards and what their role will be. There are 10 members currently for the new technical panel. They are very new. They have only just been selected and they haven't had their first meeting yet. They were selected based on risk assessment and risk management experience and expertise, and they will each have a 5-year membership, which will be renewable after that period. The technical panel will develop the annexes, or they will develop annexes through an expert drafting group. So the technical panel will consider and evaluate the evidence, such as the pest risk assessment information, existing measures, and related information, such as production information. and they will make recommendations to the IPPC Standards Committee on the topics and the priorities for development. At the moment, they only have one topic, and that was a submission by the Asia and Pacific Plant Protection Commission, and that was for a standard for mango fruit for consumption or processing. And there's a regional standard already for that to support it. So how do I see the seed industry contributing to these commodity standards? Well, there are a number of ways that the seed industry could really add value here. So you could propose topics to your National Plant Protection Organisation, who could submit them to the IPPC during the call for topics. Now, the next call for topics is next year. Alternatively, you could propose to your National Plant Protection Organisation the development of a regional standard. As I said earlier, regional standards are actually quite a good way of developing an international standard in the future. So a regional standard are easier to usually for adoption because you've got a smaller group that you're consulting with, and then that supports the development of an international standard. And it usually means that the task force for topics will look at that favourably if it is known that there's a regional standard already in place. So there is a process for putting proposals in for call of topics, and you can look at the IPPC website and search for call for topics, and it will give you further information about how to do that. Other ways, you could provide information to the IPPC through your MPPO, things like lists of pests and measures, pest risk assessment information, for instance, because I know the industry hold quite a bit of information there. That could be really useful. Efficacy information for measures where possible. And I say where possible because, as I've said previously, that independent measures and a systems approach may not always have quantitative information, but qualitative information will equally be looked at by the technical panel. And of course, pest diagnostic protocols, which there's a lot of expertise there for the industry that could be shared with the IPPC. You could also contribute as an expert if you're invited by the technical panel for commodity standards during the development of a standard. That's if they have an expert drafting group, for instance. And of course, you can always comment through your MPPO during the country consultation of each of these annexes as they become available. So as I've said, at the moment there is only one under development and, well, hasn't started development yet, and that is the mango fruit proposal by the IPPC, the Asian and Pacific Plant Protection Commission. So think about what the industry could provide and think about that for the call for topics next year. Thank you very much, and I'm very sorry I couldn't be with you today and answer any of your questions. But if you do have questions, I'm very happy to answer these through Rose Souza Richards. So if you have questions, compile a list, and Rose can send those through to me and I can answer them by email. Thank you once again for the invitation to present to you today. Thank you, and all the best for your meeting. Thank you.
Very interesting presentation. And I think that Joanne made some very interesting remarks, especially when she mentioned that we, as the international seed sector, can provide information back to IPPC via NPPOs on such a list of pests, taking into consideration especially the ISF-regulated pest list, the pest risk assessments, that all the hazard lists, all the work, all the risk assessments that we do when we're producing seeds, pest diagnostic protocols, but also comments during country consultation, which can be done via the MPPOs, but also ISF also can make comments during country consultation. The overarching standard SPM 36 applies to commodities moving through international trade. It's important that we highlighted this, and she mentioned this as well. The standards are designed to support the development of phytosanitary import requirements where measures are technically justified to facilitate safe trade. It's very important that we highlighted the technical justification. Contracting party should those consider that are valuable commodity standards when developing phytosanitary import requirements. Some things that we from the ISF and our group, the phytosanitary group, we have been working so hard on this, including the pest list and options for phytosanitary measures. As the IPPC takes on this new direction by putting greater focus on commodity or pathway-specific topics, has already been recognized that the International Phytosanitary Committee might view this as a challenge. We needed to be aware. We needed to follow up what is happening because it can directly impact the international movement of seeds. So we wanted to be together with IPPC, collaborating with them, checking how the development of this standard is going to be going through, how it's going to be implemented. The CPM has agreed on the principles around the commodity standard. It's important that we're aware of this, and it highlighted the sovereign authority of the contracting parties. This has not been diminished in any way, and that no additional obligations will be imposed on the importing countries by commodity standards. So we, as representatives of the seed sector on international level, we will continue working together with IPPC, working together with the NPPOs, and together as one voice to be able to understand how this can affect all the different other international standards, especially SPM 38 that we have been working so hard to be able to be implemented on as many countries as possible, to be able to create this harmonization of measures and the predictability when we're moving seeds. Now, I would like to move on to the next speaker, Mr. Craig Fedchock, he is the IPPC advisor for the ePhyto group lead. So next topic, it is about ePhyto. Craig will present to us an update on the latest activities of the ePhyto solution. Because as we know from the seed sector, digital readiness in the supply chain has been reviewed by the current pandemic as an urgent and critical need. Traditional links of the chain has been weakened or disrupted. And so various sectors like banking, retail, and health services have taken a massive shift to electronic means of doing business. And so we would like to see on all the different processes that go through the seed supply chain. Consumers, employees, and leaders are embracing an array of digital technologies in a more accelerated pace than ever before, out of necessity and the need for efficiency. Agriculture trade is no different, especially in phytosanitary measures which maintain standards for food safety and animal and plant health. For plant products like seed, global trading operations rely on steady communication, transparency, and phytosanitary requirements to protect plant health and ensure an international, unrestricted, and safe trade of goods. Phytosanitary certificates are key in the trade of food and agriculture products, including seeds. For seeds, phytosanitary certificates are like passports that allow seed lots to cross borders so that they can reach the market and become accessible to farmers who need them to grow crops. Efficiency on this exchanging of these phytosanitary certificates is therefore incredibly important to sustain the farming sector and to safeguard food supply during the pandemic, but also beyond. And with that, I would like to introduce you all to Craig, and he'll talk to us about the electronic phytosanitary certificate and its latest updates. Craig, the floor is yours.
Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, my camera's not on. I just got out of the dentist's, just so you know. It's one of those days, but I'm very, very, very happy to talk to the International Seed Federation and be a part of this. I really want to tell you, I've stopped giving presentations because things are happening so quickly with ePhyto now that it's almost pointless to show a map. This morning we had a conversation with the UNICC, the United Nations International Computing Center, and we're very close to having an Arabic language version of the ePhyto Gen system. We're very close, and by very close I would mean within a month or so. We're very close to having a facility to allow for businesses to provide e-payments to NPPOs. And we are already on board with a French language version of our generic system, which is a web-based system. So things are happening quickly. And just yesterday, I learned that 4 new countries have come on board the system, Pacific Island countries that are now exchanging electronic phytosanitary certificates. And there's an expectation that India should be within a couple of weeks exchanging as well. So probably the best advice I can give you to see something, if you really want to see what's happening on a regular basis, would be to go to the web page for the ePhyto system itself. And it's very easily accessible. It's www, and then all one word, ephytoexchange.org. And there you can see a number of useful pieces of information, a very, very simplified video that explains the ePhyto system in pretty good detail. There are 10 case studies from different countries of all types of development, from the United States to Costa Rica to others, on their implementation of ePhyto. And then, of course, there's the map, which seems like every day I check the map, it's changing in a very detailed way. So there's a lot of information there that can provide anybody just about anything they need to know, even if they need to know the computerized language details in order to see exactly how much work has gone into this. A lot of which has been done by the ePhyto steering group in conjunction with a lot of colleagues from around the world. We have 7 regional areas, and these include the Southwest Pacific, Latin America, North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And we've been very fortunate that there's been a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest on the part of the steering group to put together the system, which is now functioning at a rate of approximately 120,000 ePhyto certificates exchanged per month. I'm not sure if you'd like to have a little bit of background about the system itself. Obviously, it's been in use for a couple of years, but the growth recently has been very rapid. And we've had additional countries coming on board at a rate of at least 4 per month. And when the system first started, we initially started with the idea of having just a centralized hub. And then we decided, for the benefit of developing countries, that we would have a web-based application. Both of these have been produced by the United Nations International Computing Center, which is our IT partner, and they provide incredible service. Right now, we're looking forward, as I mentioned, to the Arabic language version. We're also looking forward to additional larger countries coming on board, to include countries like India, as I mentioned, but also China is getting closer to coming on board. And a number of African countries, substantial exporting countries and importing countries, such as Nigeria, and Kenya has primarily in the past been only using certification for export, but now they're about ready to receive some import certificates as well. So things happen pretty rapidly, and that's really why it's hard to give a presentation, because within a day the presentation changes. A couple of other interesting things that were in process is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has granted the FAO Investment Center, which is really sort of the economic analysis portion of the Food and Agriculture Organization, where the IPPC is headquartered, a grant of $500,000 to do a very detailed study on cost benefits of the system. And in conjunction with this effort, we're working with the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, which is housed at the World Economic Forum. We're also working with the World Bank International Finance Corporation, and Rose very well knows that we're also working with the Industry Advisory Group, which she is the co-chair of. And hopefully within 2 years, we'll have something that's quite detailed and useful across the board. But even sooner, we hope to have some preliminary data that can show the value and the efficacy of the system itself, that hopefully will provide an impetus for those other countries who haven't yet quite come on board to join up and start using the system. And finally, one of the things that's truly amazing for me and really impressive, and it makes me very proud of the fact that it's a global system, is that just also again just yesterday during a conference call, we were informed by the Chilean National Plant Protection Organization, who has their representative on the eFIDO steering group, that Paraguay and Argentina are now exchanging paperless. And while it might not seem that big of a deal, the bigger deal is the fact that Argentina and Chile were the first two countries to begin paperless exchanges. And so they've completely eliminated the need for paper in exchange in phytosanitary certification exchange. The US and Mexico are there. And this is a big step forward when we're getting more and more countries that are actually realizing that they can conduct trade safely without having the need for paper. So I'll leave you with that, just a few comments. Rose, I hope that is pretty good. And then I'm going to stay on board for a while to catch up on any questions.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Craig, for that explanation. And it's pretty much what we'd like to hear, how the things are happening with the electronic phytosanitary certification solution. And of course, as you mentioned, the industry is very interested. And see, the industry is a member of the IG. And also, I am the co-chair of the industry advisory group working alongside you. We have done a number of workshops last year exactly to try to bring more this awareness and helping NPPOs hopefully to getting on board. But I would like to just ask a few questions to you, if it is okay. One of them is that you talk about the implementation of the system. How long it is now to be able to it takes to be able to implement this system?
Well, frankly speaking, with the GENS internet-based, the web-based GENS application, and the partnership we've established with not only the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, but just with the NPPOs in general, the pickup is fairly quickly because it's web based. So all they really need is the access to the internet, a username and password, and they can start testing their exchanges. So that part is relatively quick and can take within 4 to 6 weeks. We're finding. Um, Along with that, we need to have some training components, and we've been able to provide training in actually the most unusual experience we've had recently is we had training for Algeria on the French version of the gens in Arabic. So that shows you the diverse community that puts this together. And really, truly, countries like Tunisia adopted and came on board very quickly. I think it took them only about 6 weeks. Other countries take a little bit longer because of the circumstances of how they want to access the system. Sometimes they want to do it through their own national single window system, which is another facet of eFIDO that's particularly interesting. And an excellent case of that is Madagascar. Now, Madagascar is one of the least developing countries in Africa, and they are using the GENS French language version, but really within a matter of about 4 months, and with a Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation team on the ground, they were able to connect their own national system to the GENS, and now they're exchanging live. And so it's really not as complicated unless you're trying to build your own national system or connect to a single Windows. But it seems as though the folks that put this together, and I'm one of them, I guess, did a pretty good job.
This is very good because by mention Madagascar, what actually you're saying is that you don't need to be one of the wealthiest countries to be able to have eFight implemented. Is the correct, isn't it, Craig?
Yeah, and that's the benefit to all of this. A lot of people, obviously we have to pay for the system, and we expect that some prices are going to go up, and I can explain a little bit more about that. But in essence, what we really intended to do from the very beginning was to provide the system for free to developing countries. And primarily up till now, we've depended on donor countries, the wealthier countries, the US, the EU. Incidentally, the Republic of Korea has been a very consistent provider of resources for the system. What we're finding now is we have sufficient funds to maintain it as is, but as we add different components to the system, we're finding our expenses are increasing a little bit more. Things like e-signature, back in 2015 when we started, we never considered e-signature at that point, but then the EU made it a recommendation, and things like e-payment and other beneficial type of applications that countries can use if they choose add costs. So we've got a sustainable funding working group or focus group, and the industry advisory group has a member on that group to look at ways of sustainably funding the system into the future. There are a lot of cost savings, and that's part of the cost benefit analysis work. But as we look into the future, we want to make sure that this is something, and it's good. I mean, we're not going to go broke in a couple of months or anything like that, but we want to make sure that the system is sustained well into the future, and also allow for additional enhancements as time goes along. So, all in all, I think that we're doing pretty good in terms of expenses and in time.
So you mentioned about the focus group. So my understanding is that you have already had the first meeting. So how long is the focus group is going to be coming and will last? And of course, what is the financial sustainability of the system? And you mentioned that one member of the IG is there, but are you intending to work with a much more broader participants of the industry, or will be just this unique person? Can you explain to us a little bit more?
Yeah, the focus group sort of stems from the concerns expressed by contracting parties to the IPPC, and really what that sort of intent is to really come up with a sound basis for sustaining the system into the future. Right now, we continue to get resources. Some countries give us resources on an annual basis. We've been able to have some cost savings as a result of not having to have in-person meetings. Of course, now that's changing, so we'll have to start paying for some of the in-person meetings. But the intent of this focus group is to come up with a fair and reasonable way of funding the system into the future, and we hope to have a draft paper sometime by September. Now, there have been a lot of ideas tossed around, a lot of different suggestions, and I don't think that we really have come anywhere close to settling on those. And the next meeting is really an intent to review a little bit more in detail some of the documents that have been produced about the system and ways of paying for it, and sort of to really come and have a basis. Why should whoever pay for it? What do we want them to pay for? Things like that. So the expectation is hopefully by September, October, we'll have an initial draft, which will be reviewed by our strategic planning group, an internal IPPC contracting party group, and then hopefully a honest to goodness, soup to nuts proposal prepared for the next CPM, which is going to take place, I think, at the end of March 2023.
No, this is very good, Craig, to know that there is already so much energy we put into start to make sure that the system is stay, that there is not a transitional one, but it has been developed and it will stay here with, because we believe that this has been, it provides so much opportunities. It can speed up process when it comes to the point of entry, and also safety in terms of the paperwork that they provide. So I think that is really important that there is all this work behind to maintain, to have this financial sustainability on this system. So single window system is something that has been discussed as well. Are you integrating this on the Z-FITO solution? How is it going?
Well, yeah, we are, and it's kind of a funny story behind all of this, because you know a lot of people talk, or at least in some of the international organization circles, talk about the Asakuda system, Asakuda world, and things of that nature. But as we've been going along with different countries and implementing different systems here, there, and everywhere, we're finding there are a lot of different organizations and firms that actually engage in a national single windows approach. Probably the biggest one that has a national single windows is the EU Traces system. And if that's not a single window system, I don't know what is. And we managed to develop what we call a channel, and the UNICC programmers did an amazing job working with the EU programmers, which allows for the EU Traces system itself to hook into the hub. And so any EU country, any Traces country, can send and receive via the hub, but it goes from the hub through Traces and then goes to the individual countries. That notwithstanding, the eFIDO connection has been established in some of the more developed countries like the US and things of that nature. But again, I go back to Madagascar, which has their own national system, and their single window system is linked in. Not to belabor the point too much, but the reality is we're also hooking into eventually the Asakuda system in Fiji. We're working on that, and in a couple other areas. So slowly but surely, we've been able to find that through a little bit of good programming and willingness, we've been able to link to a number of national systems. Nepal is another case in point, as well as India. India has their own national system, and we've been able to. The Indians themselves have worked on that, and so they're very close to linking. So the national single windows really, it's depending on what the customs organization of the country wants. We've discovered that any of the data that we collect on a phytosanitary certificate, as long as it can be communicated mostly in the type of the language, can really be provided to a national single window system without much trouble. So I'm feeling pretty positive about it. It's just it's just it's up to a lot of individual countries, and also a lot of countries working with their customs organization. And one other point about that is, on Tuesday, Thailand began a launch. They launched their project for eFIDO, which will integrate their national single windows system with eFIDO. So we're doing it. In some cases, it takes a long time, depending on the willingness, but in most cases, the technical part is relatively easy. We're finding it's relatively easy.
Oh, this is really good. And for my last question, it will be a double question, Craig, so be prepared. So you're talking about Fiji, Madagascar, and of course Thailand this week, which is launching the project. Which other countries do you know is already getting ready in the near future to be coming alive? And how can the seed industry encourage more NPPOs to adopt and implement the eFIDO?
Well, there are a lot of Pacific Island countries. I know that Pete Namans, who's our representative from the Southwest Pacific, just mentioned Tuvalu, and the Solomon Islands are on the verge of coming. As I mentioned, I think Belize is working towards access. There are a couple countries still in Central America, I believe El Salvador and Honduras. El Salvador and Nicaragua are close to coming on board. Switzerland is now on board. Norway is working on some things where the seed industry can help, and what really we find a great benefit to working with industry is in countries like Turkey, which is a big agriculture exporter to Europe and things like that. You know, the opportunity to meet with national officials and NPPO officials and encourage them, you know, and you know, encourage them to come on board and to join up. That's where the industry can really provide a lot of help to the effort. There are a few other countries, you know, like China. I know their customs has sort of incorporated their NPPO or their quarantine service into their customs. They are moving a little bit slowly. We're trying to encourage them to move a little bit faster. We had a workshop there last year, of course, you know, and so, you know, wherever you get a chance to just sort of simply encourage the governments to move a little bit faster, to get things done a little bit quicker. That's a big help. And of course, we're always open to donations and resources. You know, we always have an open wallet that's ready to accept all kinds of donations whenever you want to send them. But really, probably the biggest help is when the industry goes to government and says, look, you know, we're falling behind, we're losing money. And that's why we want to do the cost benefit analysis, because there are so many examples now, you know, one by one, where we're seeing that ePhyto makes a difference. Saving, you know, nearly $40,000 in demurrage charges because you can get a replacement phytosanitary certificate in seconds as opposed to days. Or, you know, you can stop fraudulent certificates, like Uganda has said. You know, the instance of fraud in plant health and plant trade is gone because they're using ePhyto all the time. So, you know, that's a real big reason and a real big help to us. So I hope that answers that question.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that you spot on. The cost benefit analysis, it will show all of the benefits that the electronic phytosanitary certificate can bring to the food chain, not just for the seed sector. But we are very supportive of this initiative, and we will continue working alongside you, Craig, and the IPPC community to make sure that we are always making the different NPPOs, the NPPOs that we work so closely with, aware of this, and we'll continue supporting via the workshops that we have done last year, and we'll continue to do this year. And thank you so much, Craig, for being here with us and to explain so fully about what is happening with the Phyto solution. And we'll keep the collaboration going, and looking forward to see you very soon. Thank you so much. And now I would like to move on to the third and final topic of this event today, which it is the International Day of Plant Health. This is a very important to the seed sector, because the International Seed Federation does celebrate, together with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, and also together with the International Plant Protection Convention, the first International Day of Plant Health. This International Day was unanimously adopted by the UN General Assembly to be able to raise awareness on plant health, including seed health, as the foundation for no life on Earth. The seed industry has been supportive since the beginning, when we were members of the Steering Committee for the International Year of Plant Health, which is celebrated plant health in 2020, but due to the COVID, it did last until the first half of 2021. The implementation of this specific day on the calendar to promote plant health is important to all actors involved in food production and consumer health. ISF strongly believes that seed health is inseparable to the achievement of the important goals within the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs. Therefore, we believe that this implementation of the International Day of Plant Health will carry on the message from the International Year of Plant Health and continue to raise global awareness on how protecting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and boost economic development for years to come. The celebration comes a week before the ISF World Seed Congress, where we'll be meeting together in Barcelona, where the international trade of healthy quality seed is also on the agenda at our biggest global gathering of the seed industry. Keeping seeds and consequently plants healthy is crucial to ensure sustainable agriculture and food system, as well as to protect the environment and ecosystems. ISF is working towards making the best quality seed accessible to all, to support food security and sustainable agriculture. We're looking forward to continue this collaboration that we have with FAO and IPPC on bringing the message of plant health to a wider audience. But don't forgetting that plant health starts with seed health. We do hope that this initiative will lead to further awareness and, of course, international collaboration between all actors in the food chain, including the governments and the seed sector, on the importance of plant health. The International Day of Plant Health ceremony will take place on the 12th of May 2022, and the seed sector will be represented there. The anticipated first ever International Day of Plant Health will be a milestone for us in 2022. With that, we have launched a 2-week social media campaign to be able to promote the importance of not only seed health for plant health, but of plant health for agriculture production, for food security, and as well for the environment. And I would like to share with you all, it's my pleasure, one of the videos that was prepared by one of our members, Jason Garita from ANOVI, National Seed Association of Spain. And I hope you will enjoy.
Hello, I'm Joanne Garita. I'm the plant pathologist of the Spanish Plant Breeders Association. Today my job starts with a glance at the state of the projects and assays that we perform. For instance, I look at the state of the plants in the greenhouse, or I check the state of our microbial cultures. And I keep working on my other duties. For example, I have to write project proposals, or write some articles, or prepare my lecturing in plant pathology. Finally, I dedicate some time to the activities of the organizations where I represent my company. For example, the IDPH group of the International Seed Federation. When I was a teenager, at the very beginning of my studies in biology, I started working in a research project associated with the vectors of the plant pathogenic bacteria Xylella fastidiosa. That was very impressive to me and create a great curiosity in my mind. So I started to learn all that I could about the plant pathogens, but keeping some special feeling for plant-associated bacteria. Then, after my postdoctoral studies, I look for a position in the seed production industry, because this is an industry with a high investment in research, development, and innovation, but also because I'm totally convinced that the seed is fundamental in agriculture. The work in plant pathology and seed health testing that we develop here at the Spanish Plant Breeders Association directly impacts all the stakeholders of the Spanish agricultural sector. For instance, we ensure that our farmers can produce their crops by using high quality and healthy seeds of each one of the plant varieties available and adapted to their necessities, but also adapted to the necessities of the agri-food industry, as well as those necessities of the final consumers. We also spread the word to the public in general about the central role of healthy seeds in our agriculture. This with the objective of creating a mass consciousness about this topic. Plant health in general is one of the major concerns in food production. We all need to know that we are living in a planet with an increasing population, but the resources available for food production are not infinite. So we have to take advantage of all the tools that we have for gaining the objective of producing more with less. Without a doubt, plant health research is one of the principal instruments that we have for gaining this objective. So, in my opinion, it is a great idea to recall this to all the population by promoting a special day for plant health.
Wow, this is fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to join all the different dignitaries on the International Day of Plant Health on the 12th of May, and looking forward to see all of you, our members, in Barcelona and starting from next week. So I would like to say thank you today to all the speakers, to Joanne Wilson, to Craig Fedchock for these such excellent presentations today, to explaining to the seed sector the importance of the new commodity standards, the new commodity standard SPM 46, what is happening on electronic phytosanitary certificate, and for me to also to share to you a little bit of how important it is, the International Day of Plant Health for us, for the international seed sector. And thank you to you to have come to join us, to listen to us, and looking forward to see you all very soon. Thank you so much. Take care. Looking forward to see you next time. Bye-bye.
I am life. I am home to millions, and I sustain millions more. My abundance brings prosperity, while my scarcity can be deadly. I cover much of the earth, and my influence extends far beyond. I have been around for longer than you can imagine. But my world is threatened. People need to take notice and do more to secure my future, because I am worth protecting. Your health relies on my health. Your life relies on mine. I am plants.